Bryan Ray, America's Rugby News, Major League Rugby 2023 preview. The San Diego Legion, well, the traditional powerhouses of the Western Conference, certainly even before those conferences were in place, always title contenders. Last season, not so much. I think you'd have to give them the label as the biggest underachievers of the season, given the talent that was on this roster. I think they should have been better than a 500 team, squeaking into the playoffs only because of that sticky gill situation. So a pretty disappointing campaign, I think, for San Diego fans. Had a new coach, Danny Lee, in last year. Think he could have done a little bit more with the squad that he had. Look at at where they were playing last year. I mean, sold out crowd every time, but it was only capacity 2,000 at the San Diego State University Sports Deck. Kind of an unusual venue, to say the least, for MLR. A lot to look forward to in 2023, though, specifically or particularly the new move to the new stadium, Snapdragon Stadium. Brand new facility, looks gorgeous, 35,000 capacity. So, I mean, we're talking night and day compared to last year's venue to this one. Very excited to see that. And San Diego, it seems, are pulling out all the stops as far as putting their roster together for 2023. A lot of changes. Let's start with 2022's squad and peel away the guys that are not there this season. Starting in our front row, Joe Walsh, this loosehead prop out of New Zealand, back in New Zealand, really didn't make much of an impact last season. Pat Lynott, a Canadian front rower, former Arrow, loosehead prop actually filled in at hooker a little bit last season. They did have some injury problems there. He's now out of MLR, working in real estate. Matt Moulds, this hooker, came in from New Zealand, had premiership experience, injured halfway through the season, just didn't make the impact they thought that he would. James Hilterbrand brought him, kind of parachuted him in for the last, 3 games of the season. Former Eagles hooker back in Australia. Peter Malcolm, probably not too pleased about that whole Hilterbrand situation, and justifiably packing his bags, moving to Seattle. Chris Shade, named in the matchday squad a handful of times, didn't even see the field once. Not with the team now, with Nola Gold, currently with American Raptors. Henkus van Wyk, you have to say, of all their signings, he'd be near the top as far as one that actually delivered, played tight head, played some loose head, back in South Africa, so a shame he did play well. Paddy Ryan, shipping off to Chicago, was meant to be replaced by the other Paddy Ryan, the Australian international, and he's now decided that he's not coming in 2023, but we'll get back to that. Paddy Ryan, US version, going to Chicago, appropriately because he was born in Chicago. Ben Mitchell, outstanding line-out jumper, joining Malcolm in Seattle. That's definitely a loss for them. Jonah Dietenberger, pretty much stiffed last season. Went and played with the USA Falcons in the offseason, traded to Utah in the deal that brought another guy over here we'll get to in a moment. Jonah Dietenberger is gone. Let's see, Rowan O'Regan, Australian loose forward, big hitter, plays mostly blindside or number 8, filled in at lock, I think, once or twice last season, but injured, didn't play a whole lot of the season. Michael Smith, absolutely outstanding for them last year, the Canadian International Open side. Bright guy, and reflected in his kind of career decision. He's now studying medicine over in Victoria in Canada, so definitely a big loss for them. And seeing as Canada's out of the World Cup, I just wonder if we've maybe seen the last of Smith at the highest. I hope not. I hope we see him a little bit more with Canada, but we shall soon see. But he's been brilliant in his time with San Diego. Chris Robshaw, unfortunately, injuries just wrecked his time. He did manage to play a few games last season, but very much looked like a guy at the end of his career. Over here, Nico Gilly, a local scrum half. I think he was named in the match day lineup about 7 times. I think he played maybe 10 minutes all season, really, if that. Harshly treated by Danny Lee. Another one in that, same kind of vein. Patrick Madden hardly saw the pitch last year. He's now gone to the American Raptors. Pretty much ignored. Dom Iacovino, this young midfielder. Another one in the same, as Gilly, as Madden, as Deep. Dietenberger. Danny Lee just didn't trust his young players, didn't play Dom Iacovino hardly at all. I think, again, in like 10 minutes total all season. Now with the American Raptors, should be an MLR. Disappointing treatment, has to be said of these young players in San Diego. Josh Teal, Canadian center, recovered from a long-term injury, played a few games last season, but didn't get any starts. He's now joined the Canada 7 squad. I think he should probably be in MLR somewhere. Out wide, Kainoa Lloyd, Canadian winger, did an okay job when called upon last season, but again, didn't get a whole lot of opportunities. Picked up by Chicago in the dispersal draft, but didn't actually sign with them yet. I'm not sure why. I think they could probably use him. So he might be, if teams are looking for a winger, as a good finisher anyways. Marcus Tupuola only played a couple games last season, really was on loan from the Eagles 7 squad. Bjorn Basson, I was a little bit skeptical when they originally signed him, but to his credit, he was pretty good over the past couple seasons, even filled in at 13 at times. He's now gone off to France playing with Limoges. And of course, the legendary Joe Peterson really saved their bacon last season. Who knows what they might have done, without him. And then really over the years, he's just been absolutely outstanding since his first appearance in MLR. Looks like Joe is going to stay with his wildlife reserve in South Africa, not returning, at least for the time being. He hasn't officially said, I'm retired, but, once you get up to, what is he, 38 now, I think, that's probably it for him. Sad because he has been absolutely superb. So there you go. A lot of turnover. These are the returners. Not really too many. What, about a dozen odd guys coming back? So lots of names to talk about coming in. That's up next, our 2023 newcomers. All right, new names for the cohort to watch out for this season. Now, first we got to do a little bit of a shift here in the front row. Nate Sylvia, who has been playing loosehead for the past, 4 seasons, he switched over to tight head with the Eagles in the World Cup qualifiers. They were a little short there because of injuries, and he's not completely new to that position. He did play tight head his first season with San Diego, but now he is switching there kind of permanently this season. So we're going to slide him over there at number 3. Chris Bowman recently re-signed. They picked Bowman up because, they needed him. I'm not sure if he was going to be in the plans initially, but then when Paddy Ryan, Australian version, decided that he wasn't actually coming back, they needed another tight head. So there you go, Chris Bowman, at 35 years old, still got a little bit of legs in him yet. Couple new loose heads coming in, internationals no less. Fakaosi Pifaletti, probably better known as Oti Pifaletti, played with Austin last year, but he was with San Diego before that, so this is a return for him via the dispersal draft. Also picked up DJ Sears Duyuru, the Canadian international. Tons of experience, played with LA last year. He is joining as well. So 2 handy domestic international loose heads there. A couple other props coming in. Another one from LA, Fred Apulu, big, huge guy. But he'd actually placed loose forward before that, and even before that, he was a back with Samoa's U20 side, but he is US eligible. So there's a project for new scrum coach Alex Corbisiero. And another one, Oliver Kane, coming in from the University of San Diego, picked up in the collegiate draft. He's with the USA age grade high performance program. Another huge guy, 6'4", 270-ish. So there you go. Now, if you look at that balance, it's not quite right. You got 4 tight heads and 2 loose heads. Sylvia can go back in and play loose head, but for me, I think they should probably be on the lookout for another prop, maybe another third loose head there, which, kind of question why they let Pat Leinart go. But anyways, 3 new hookers to talk about. One of them, Utah Warriors fans will be very familiar with, Sema Malolo. Last year he went back to Australia with training with one of the Super Rugby sides. Played in the Shoot Shield again, so he is back in the MLR, this time with San Diego. Shiloh Klein, New Zealand under-20 select, but US eligible, born in the States, and it looks like he's putting his hand up for Eagles selection now. Played with the Crusaders this past season, so has some Super Rugby experience, and still a young guy, so that's a very handy pickup. And they originally had Koi Nelligan in the draft, but when they got Klein, they traded Nelligan over to Old Glory DC, which is probably the place for him anyway, since he's a local DC guy. And Sean McNulty returning to California. He was started last year with LA, then he went to Seattle, now back in California in San Diego. Ireland under 20 international, but US eligible. So pretty handy trio of hookers there. A couple new locks coming in, and pretty good ones. Tom Franklin returning to San Diego after spending the past season in Japan, New Zealand, Maori International. An excellent second row, and just 32, so still has some time left in him. And Isaac Ross, who's been one of the dominant line-out jumpers for Austin for the past couple of years, getting a bit up there now, about 38 years old, so his time will be managed, but there you go. That's a pretty stacked second row options. All imports, though, you will note, so they're going to need a little bit of flexibility coverage. So I think what we've seen in the preseason anyways, Chris Terori played a lot in the second row last season, ideally a blindside flanker, but we're going to stick him up there at lock as kind of their domestic option. Okay, back row, Dan Pryor returning, Tavita Tamilau returning, their Eagles number 8. Also coming in, well, what do you do when your 36-year-old Chris Robshaw retires? Well, you hire 36-year-old Blair Cowan as a replacement. Scottish international, tons of top-flight experience. Rugby fans will know lots about him, so he's come in. Another guy they picked up on the flank, Christian Poitevin. Coming in from the LA Giltinis, very handy pickup, US eligible as well, so that is excellent for them. As we saw on the weekend, he was playing alongside Cowan in the back row. We'll get to that match day 23 stuff. Tipu Afongia coming in, a Tonga U20 select, a flanker, an import though. He was kind of on the fringes of the NPC squads down in New Zealand. Malachi Latu, kind of a complete unknown, plucked out of Hawaiian rugby. He is U.S. eligible in residency, so interesting to see what he can do. He's playing a bit of lock over there as well, but definitely too short to be playing lock at the professional level. And Finn Kearns coming in, the son of Phil Kearns, the great Wallabies hooker, now signed, it says as a number 8, but looking at the size of him, he's more of an open side flanker thing, but I mean, we'll stick him at 8 for now. As far as I know, he's not US eligible, so it's interesting that they've got a couple these import guys who are probably going to be reserve or second, third choice kind of players, so interesting decisions there. Halfbacks, I mean, you'd think that Nate Augsburger and Jason Higgins would be pretty, good. You're set there, scrum half, right, at least, but maybe not. So what they've got is Richard Judd from the Hurricanes. He's got a fair amount of Super Rugby experience. Not a first-choice player there, but he is experienced. So they brought him. Now, he's a bit different. He's more of a pass-first distributor kind of 9, whereas Augsburger and Higgins really like to attack. They like to run. So maybe that's why Danny Lee looked to bring him in, and it looks like they might be trying Augsburg in another position. We'll get to that. Will Hooley back. Again, he could play a different position. And Josh Henderson returning also at fly half. Only played a couple games last season after arriving late. And Luke Burton, why not grab him as well? Coming in from the LA Giltinis, fly half, inside center, fullback, pretty handy, eh? Returning to San Diego. Of course, he played there in 2020. Matt Ananu, not the best year last season. I think he'll want to improve his own personal performance. He looked like a frustrated guy last year. If he's going to captain the team again, and it looks like he is, he's really got to pick up his standards a little. I think by his own admission, he wasn't at his best. Thomas Morani, U.S. eligible Argentine, got injured kind of in the second half of that season, and Tion Lutz filled in at 13, more of a 12, but we'll leave him there for the moment. Alex Horan coming in, the son of Tim Horan. So, I mean, you've got the son of Tim Horan there, the son of Phil Kearns, the son of Simon Poitevin. Those 3 great Australians, of course, won the World Cup together back in 1991. So pretty cool. But Horan, again, I don't think he's U.S. eligible. Versatile player. Again, similar to Burton, 10, 12, 15 kind of guy. So interesting that he's come in. Filimoni Wangainambete, giant Fijian guy. He played with Canterbury down in New Zealand. He was back in Fiji. I think it was Naitasiri this past year. 6'3", 6'4", 230 pound. Outside center or wing. I'm going to stick him on the wing right now beside Thomas Awaki from New Zealand. He's returning. Played some wing, some outside center last season. Matias Freire is returning, Argentine Sevens international, but U.S. eligible now. Ryan Matias is back on the wing. Marcel Bracchi signed in from the Eagles, can play outside center, can play fullback. We'll throw him at fullback here, but I think we'll probably slot in at another position. We'll get to that in just a moment. And then Mikey Teo, picking up him in a trade, returning to San Diego from the Utah Warriors. So there you go. There's our roster for 2023. I mean, geez, you look at the back line. It's unbelievable. I mean, too deep at every spot. A lot of these guys who figure to be reserves could be starting for other teams. So, you know, they must really like Southern California, really want to stay there, eh? So, some interesting selection decisions ahead of them. So that's what we'll do next. We'll look at San Diego's optimal, or, you know, as best we can figure out their match day 23. Okay, here's San Diego's match day 23. First thing we have to know, how many imports are they allowed on the roster in their match day squad? That number for San Diego is 10. And that is important for them. As we just seen, they've got a whole lot of imports in their squad. So there's going to have to be a bit of rotation, I think, this season. So they actually gave us kind of a sneak preview of what their probable starters are to start the season anyways are against Utah this past weekend. So let's take a look at what they had out there on the field. OTP Folletti was starting at loose head prop, and then at hooker they had Sama Malolo, and at tight head prop they had Nate Sylvia. Second row, well, they had Isaac Ross and they had Ben Grant. We'll put Grant in there. I think what they'll really do, Tom Franklin, I don't think played at all in that game. Maybe he had a slight knock or something. He was resting. But I think he's going to be eventually our starter there. And then we'll just stick Ross in there to kind of rotate in among the three of them. They're going to want to manage his time this season. Christian Poitevin was at number 6. They had Blair Cowan in at number 7. And at number 8, Tavita Tamilau. Starting 9, they're starting halfbacks here. They had Richard Judd at 9, and they had Josh Henderson actually at 10. I thought that was an interesting selection because they put Will Hooley in at 15. Now he's got experience there with the Eagles. He played 10 with San Diego last season though, so I thought that was an interesting call. So in the midfield, they had Ma'ananu at 12. We had Marcel Bracchi at 13. Of course, he played a lot of fullback with Austin and the Eagles the past couple years. And then on the wings, Mikey Teo here on the right side. And then they had Nate Augsburger coming in on the left wing. Of course, he played there with the Eagles in the repechage as well. So I thought that was interesting. Now, Augsburger also played at scrum half in the other half of that game, and Teo also spent some time at fullback. So no doubt we will see some rotation, especially when, you know, you saw the depth of talent in that back line. So let's look at our bench, assuming this is you know, where they're going to start their season anyways with their 23. Looking at their bench, Shiloh Klein, definitely you'd have to think he'd be there as hooker. I think once we get into the season, Klein might be the starter at 2, because it seems to me Malolo would be the better choice to come in for, you know, that second half impact substitution role, whereas Klein is more set piece oriented, more of a traditional hooker. So to me, it makes more sense to start Klein and bring Malolo off the bench. But either way, you've got quality, and of course, you got Sean McNulty here as well, so we'll stick him there. Our loose head prop, Sears Duru. I'm sure DJ will rotate with P. Folletti there at loose head. He's got way more international experience, but you know, both handy international loose heads, so that's good. Chris Bowman, of course, we're going to put in there as a backup tight head. Now our second row, let's look at our import situation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got room for 3 more among our reserves. So probably Jale Railala, big Fijian, second row coming off the bench. Of course, you could have Ross there as well if Franklin and Grant are starting. But, you know, I would think that Ross more will be just a straight rotate in as a starter. And then Railala, more of an impact guy coming off the bench. Hey, you could put both of them there if you wanted to, looking at you know, the makeup of the rest here. But I think Dan Pryor, definitely our loose forward reserve, covers across the back row. And then we've got Jason Higgins. I mean, we got Augsburger in there anyways, so you could maybe do a 6-2 on the bench since he's covering scrum half. But I mean, we'll stick Higgins there for a minute. We'll put Luke Burton in here covering 10, 12, 15. So there's our 3 imports among the subs. So that gives us our 10. And then here, I mean, we probably need a midfield. Well, he plays center, so we've got options. We can put Thomas Morani in there, more of an outside center. Ryan Mattias, he can play in the wing, he can play 13. Hey, even filled in at 9 last year. I don't think he'll be too keen to be doing too much that year. And Matthias Freire, who can play 13, he can play wing, he can play fullback. So you got options, lots of options there. If we were doing a 6-2, since you got Augsburger in there, you take out Higgins, you slide Pryor down, and now maybe you put Chris Terrori in there, who can play second row, he can play blindside flanker, gives you a little different options there, different look. But we'll go back to the more conventional 5-3 for now. And I mean, let's just look at the talent, particularly in that back line. If this is what we've got, right, look at the guys who aren't going to be in there. Tian Lutz, not in there. Thomas Awaki, not in there. Filimani Wanganabete, this new Fijian they've got. I mean, they just brought him in, but where are you going to fit him on there? Not in there. Alex Horan, not in there. I mean, and then you look at the flankers, they got Finn Kearns and Tupou Afungia as well. All these import guys that can't fit in the lineup because of our limit. I mean, they've only got the 7 starting, sure, but I mean, you still got to use some on the bench. I don't know. You got to pick one of these 3 guys, Morani, Mattias, and Freire as your backs reserve probably, right? So 2 of those guys are going to be left out. I mean, the depth of talent that they have in that back line is kind of hard to comprehend. You know, are they, you know, maybe going to look to trade one of these guys and maybe acquire another import slot as the season goes along? That wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, when you've got this much talent. And you'd have to think, frankly, with Miami coming in next year, that they'll target some of these guys. Morani, I'm sure, will be at the top of their list with his not only his Argentine connection, but he was born in Miami. So, anyways, there you go. That's kind of what the team looks like. As you see, a lot of decisions. I think we'll see a fair bit of rotation in this back line. But, you know, looking at the strength of this lineup as the 23 as a whole on paper, that's about as good as it gets in the Western Conference. So the question is, can Danny Lee get this side firing on all cylinders and playing the way he wants them to play? If he can, and they aren't underachievers like last season, I think you'd have to put these guys as your, you know, maybe your number 1 seeds in the West, or at least in the picture. Obviously, Seattle, I'm looking at them as well, looking quite strong. And, you know, you can't rule out Utah as well. They look vastly improved. And Houston, you know, they're going to be tough as well. So those are the 4 teams I think that are going to be challenging for those playoff spots in the West. I'm going to put these guys near the top, probably top 2, I think, in the West, given the strength of talent that they've got. I mean, even with these 2, the twin open sides, Poitevin and Cowan here in the back row, those line-out jumpers, Grant and Ross and Franklin, are all outstanding. So, I mean, you really only need 2 of them anyways, and I'm sure they'll be fine. And they've got punch, you know, in the back line. They've got Nanu, who's very physical. Brocky's obviously very experienced. I will say the one thing that's maybe concerning is their age profile. This is the oldest team, the oldest squad in MLR, average age of 29. It was the same last season. So that's a little bit concerning to me. And I think also prop a little bit thin. They've got the 2 inexperienced guys, Pulu and Kane, behind those 4 internationals. So I think maybe they'll try to pick up a prop as well along the way. Maybe they can work a trade again with all this ridiculous talent that they've got signed up here that just can't get into the side. So yeah, it looks certainly new stadium, new look squad, a lot to look forward to for San Diego fans this year. Definitely, you know, if everybody can stay healthy, probably title contenders as well. It'll be in that mix. So there you go. Major League Rugby 2023, San Diego Legion. Let me know what you think.